The war ended in September or October of one year, and January I started here.
I came in 1948 to start the diploma course.
The early 1940s. I was a first-year student before I went into the Air Force.
I go back way before I first started. In fact, I can remember this hall as a candidate for AMEB exams as a sort of 4-year-old.
I arrived here in Melbourne from France in 1975, late 75. And Melba Hall then was still the same beautiful hall it is now, except it didn't have the upper area, the mezzanine area, and the floor was flat.
You came in the front door and there was nothing till you met the doors, and they were those ones about that wide. There'd be 2 or 3 of those and they could fold them back.
The main stage was too high for ordinary concerts. It was a stage made for orchestral and choral affairs. And so to put a little chamber group up there and then have the audience in the hall didn't work very well.
And it had a multicoloured purple and green ceiling. There was no apron to the stage, so the stage was effectively a platform. There was no balcony, and there was no kind of raised seating, permanent seating. It was all just those tiered seatings with the noisy seats that flap every time someone gets up.
You had the AMEB people, of course. People forget that they had the rooms upstairs at that end, next door to the Ormond Professor's room.
The great Australian singer Dame Nellie Melba gave a concert for us in 1909 which raised so much money we were able to build a concert hall. Melba Hall, we named it after her. It's got really the best acoustics for chamber music in Melbourne. It's the centrepiece of our facilities here. The orchestra rehearses there, so does the choir.
Melba, as it is still today, is like the centre of the conservatorium, and therefore the famous people who came to visit, but also when you heard that rather brilliant student or that rather brilliant composition, and then later they went on to become people who are out there in the profession. So that's what Melba Hall means, I think, to many of us.
As well as a place of performance, this is primarily a place of learning. And because it's not overly big, I think it's really well suited to people's first performances and people learning the art and the craft of music and of performance.
It's like a gracious old lady, and I think this hall is the very centre of it. I go back to what the Deputy Chancellor said, that they regard music as the very soul of the university.
I think it's important to note that Melba Hall was built because of the generous spirit of the Melbourne community, and particularly Dame Nellie Melba, who had a number of fundraising concerts to sort of raise the money to build this remarkable hall. And 100 years later, philanthropy is still important for us.
One of the things that is so great for people who do have money to give is to give it either to young people who are talented in music, because they get something back from it. They see these people develop and they get something immediately back. Or to give it to something like this building, the Conservatorium, the music building, even music education, but certainly to a thing like the Melba Hall, because then they can come and see the results of what they've done by hearing these wonderful concerts taking place.
Well, looking at it more or less the way it is now, I think it looks rather good.
This space, the University of Melbourne Conservatorium, is entwined into the fabric of Australian musical history, and it will always be, I think, a very meaningful and a sacred space for future generations of musicians.
Now that it's looking so good, I hope that it might re-establish itself as a preeminent Melbourne classical music venue and also a chamber music venue. I know it's got more competition than it once did in the sense that we now have, for instance, the Melbourne Recital Centre, which offers very, very beautiful venues as well. But there is a particular charm to this venue, and it's also a wonderful size. I think in many ways the ideal size for a lot of chamber ensembles. So I really hope to see it thriving as a chamber music venue in this city.
I think the future for Melbourne Hall will always be as a wonderful performance space. The reverberation in here is special, and even though the change of it going from a level floor to a more theatre raked stage doesn't seem to have reduced the pleasure in playing in here. It's a good size. So I think there's another 100 years at least for Melba to keep going.
My hopes for the Melba Hall are that it will continue to be a place where young people perform, gain experience and make their names. As I've said, that I think is one of the important things. I think the university should be considering much more the humanities as well as the vocational training, and so therefore the arts and music become very significant in the whole education of people and university education in general.
Its symbolic value as a home of excellent music, excellent institutional training is enormously important. And the significance of music to the University of Melbourne, and by extension Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, is enormous. Civilised countries have wonderful music programs, and that is what Melba Hall really symbolises and is.